Ever since I first saw Steven Spielberg's 1975 cult classic horror thriller shark movie Jaws, I got so scared of shark attacks I stopped going to the beach, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. In fact, this fear is what made Jaws one of the most successful film franchises out there, with 4 films and many cheap knockoffs. Not only that, the film's success also encouraged other filmmakers to come up with parodies, including making a horror film franchise with monstrous flesh-eating fish straight out of the swampy waters of the Amazon rainforest. Yep, we're talking about Piranha. The very mention of that name scares the shit out of me, and some of the credit for that goes to the Piranha film franchise. But in case you're wondering which Piranha movie is the best and which one's the worst, you've come to the right place, because in this video, I'm going to be ranking all 9 Piranha films from best to worst. So, without further ado, let's get this feeding frenzy started. Piranha, 1978. Number 1 on the list is the original Piranha movie from 1978, which we think, without a doubt, is the best Piranha movie of them all. And just in case you haven't seen it, we're going to give you a brief synopsis of the movie's plot. So there's an insurance investigator named Maggie, played by Heather Menzies, and her local guide Paul, played by Bradford Dillman, who are out investigating the disappearance of 2 teenagers in the Lost River Lake area when they accidentally release some genetically engineered flesh-eating Vietnam War-era piranhas they found at a secret military facility, and these fish swim downstream towards a summer resort and its guests, who could be their next meal. As you may know, the film was created as a low-budget B-movie to capitalize on the massive success of Jaws, and it came out 3 years after the original Jaws came out, and in the same year that Jaws 2 was released. In fact, Universal Studios, which owns the Jaws film franchise, was initially thinking of suing the makers and stopping Piranha from being released because Jaws 2 had been released just a couple of months earlier. However, Steven Spielberg, the guy who made the original Jaws film, gave Piranha a thumbs up and the lawsuit was dropped. Matter of fact, Spielberg described this film as the best of the Jaws ripoffs, and that alone says a lot about the film. Also, because this movie was so inspired by Jaws and was made on a way smaller budget of about $600,000, it's no surprise that it had a similar plot with everything scaled down. For instance, the massive animatronic great white shark from Jaws was replaced by smaller but lethal genetically mutated piranhas, which were basically rubber puppet fish attached to sticks. There's a river and a swimming pool in place of the mighty Atlantic Ocean, and the New England beach town of Amity Island from Jaws was substituted with a fictional summer resort called Lost River Lake Resort, and considering the film's budget, they did a pretty fantastic job. So much so that the film went on to gross something like $16 million at the box office and has since become a cult classic. Piranha 3D, 2010. The second best Piranha movie, according to us, is Piranha 3D, which came out in 2010, and, as the name suggests, it's a 3D remake of the original 1978 movie. But that's not to say the plot is exactly the same, as this movie is a more modern Gen Z type of film, not just in its treatment of the fish, but also in the story. The film starts with a local fisherman named Matt Boyd, played by Richard Dreyfuss, the same guy who played marine biologist Matt Hooper in Jaws, fishing in Lake Victoria, Arizona, when an underground tremor splits the lake floor, causing a whirlpool. Boyd falls in and is eaten by a school of prehistoric flesh-eating piranhas that emerge from the breach and release into the lake. Interestingly, fisherman Boyd is not only dressed like Hooper from Jaws, but is also singing "Show Me the Way to Go Home" as an homage to Jaws. Meanwhile, around the same time, there's a spring party in town, and a swarm of around 50,000 teenagers arrive to drink beer, have sex, and get some sun, and of course, swim in the lake. Sort of like the same thing that happens in Jaws, but this is an R-rated movie, and you know what happens when you swim in piranha-infested waters, especially the 3D prehistoric kind. Now it's up to Sheriff Julie Foster, played by Elizabeth Shue, and her deputy Fallon, played by Ving Rhames, to join forces with the tourists who don't seem to understand the dangers at first in order to tackle the piranha menace before everyone ends up becoming a meal. Another fun fact about the film is that it's directed by Alex Aja, who's given us other horror films like The Hills Have Eyes and Crawl, a movie about a killer alligator on the loose, but that's not all. He wanted Joe Dante, the director of the original Piranha, and James Cameron, who directed Piranha 2: The Spawning, to play boat captains in the film, but that didn't work out. Nevertheless, Piranha 3D has a lot of nudity and gore if you're into that sort of thing, and obviously it got an R rating because of all the violence violence, sex, and gore, but that didn't stop the film from getting generally positive reviews from critics and audiences alike, with the film getting a 76% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and grossing over $83 million worldwide against a $24 million budget. We highly recommend this one if you haven't already seen it. Piranha 2: The Spawning, 1982. From Piranha 3D, we move to Piranha 2: The Spawning, which came out as a direct sequel to the original 4 years later in 1982, and it's the second film in the Piranha series, as you might have guessed by its name. This creature feature was directed by none other than James Cameron, and as a matter of fact, it was his first feature directorial. I know what you're thinking, wasn't that The Terminator? Well, not technically, although we're sure Cameron would prefer us to think so. Nevertheless, Piranha 2: The Spawning follows a scuba diving instructor named Anne Kimbrough, played by Trisha O'Neill, who starts investigating some mysterious brutal deaths at a Caribbean resort that are linked to a sunken U.S. supply ship where a couple is found dead inside. While investigating the deaths, Anne discovers some genetically altered piranhas that can fly. Yes, these fish can actually fly, and that's why the film was subtitled Flying Killers internationally. Anne breaks into the morgue with her boyfriend Tyler, played by Steve Marchuk, and finds the bodies have been eaten in many different places. Tyler is a biochemist who worked on the team that developed a specimen of flying piranhas and tells Anne about them, confessing that they were lost in the water due to an accident. So these flying piranhas have escaped a military experiment, as is so often the case in these movies, and they've developed wings and begun to terrorize guests at a resort during a fishing party organized by the resort. Anne teams up with Tyler and her ex-husband, who's also the town's police chief, and they fight off the winged fish that can both swim and fly. And although this film bombed at the box office and with critics, and while the acting isn't great, we found it kind of funny and entertaining because of its unique setting and the creative use of piranhas. I mean, imagine watching those flesh-eating fish flying through the air. Even if they look bad, it's still kind of fun. Piranha, 1995. While Piranha 2: The Spawning, and Piranha 3D were all released in theaters, this 1995 film, also known as Piranhas in some markets, was a made-for-TV horror film like so many other Piranha films on the list. However, being a made-for-TV movie doesn't make it all that bad either. When we first saw this one, we kind of enjoyed it, to be honest, and as the name suggests, it's a proper remake of the original 1978 film of the same name, and the plot is very similar. Just like in the original, this film follows a private investigator named Maggie McNamara, played by Alexandra Paul, who's been hired by a wealthy resort owner named J.R. Randolph, played by Monty Markham, to help find his missing niece Barbara, played by Larissa McComas, who disappeared with her boyfriend, Davey. The reality is, they were the first victims of the piranhas after they went for a swim in an abandoned military base pool. Maggie teams up with a reclusive local environmentalist named Paul, played by William Catt, to help her in her investigation, and they head to the abandoned military site and decide to drain the pools to see what's in there. While there, they're attacked by a scientist named Dr. Letitia, played by Darlene Carr, who has been researching genetically modified species of amphibious piranhas that can survive in freshwater as well as seawater. These piranhas were in the military pool, but Maggie drained the pool, so they made their way out into the river and toward the bustling Lost River Lake Resort, which is owned by J.R. Randolph. Maggie and Paul inform the corrupt local sheriff, who tries to stop the heroes from revealing the danger of the killer piranhas because Mr. Randolph doesn't want this to jeopardize a party he has organized for his resort's grand opening. Meanwhile, Paul's daughter Susan, who by the way is played by a young Mila Kunis in her debut role, is at a scout camp upstream when the piranhas are released. This prompts Paul and Maggie to try and save her and the others before the piranhas reach the resort. We know the plot is quite similar to the original, which is number 1 on our list, but this movie has its own appeal, which lies in its campy, nostalgic charm, cheesy effects, and an in-your-face type delivery of B-movie horror that some of us find entertaining. Plus, this movie marks the debut of Mila Kunis, so that's also something to look forward to. Piranhaconda, 2012. Now, this one is where we get firmly into the B-movie category, and we think you can probably guess by the film's title that this is a movie about a piranha-anaconda hybrid. This sci-fi B-movie was released on the Sci-Fi Channel on June 16, 2012, and this low-budget horror film follows a group of scientists led by herpetologist Professor Lovegrove, played by Michael Madsen, as they research eggs that belong to a hybrid creature, a half piranha, half anaconda, on a remote island, and one of these flesh-eating snakefish hybrids kills all of Lovegrove's crew except for him when he steals a nest full of eggs, triggering the enraged adult Piranhacondas to go on the rampage to retrieve them. Meanwhile, around the same time, a film crew making a slasher movie on the island gets abducted by some kidnappers led by Pike, played by Michael Swan, and his girlfriend Talia, played by Rachel Hunter. The film crew is held for ransom, and they learn that their kidnappers also took Lovegrove previously and held him for ransom as well. However, their plans come unstuck when they learn that they're being pursued by a pair of Piranhacondas who are adept at killing on land and in water, forcing all of them to fight the monstrous, toothy serpentine hybrids for survival on land and water. Interestingly, what we didn't know about the film was that Roger Corman, who was the producer of the original Piranha from 1978, served as the executive producer on this one and several other tongue-in-cheek hybrid creature features such as the Sharktopus film series, Dino Shark, and Super Gator. No wonder the man's called the king of B-movies. R.I.P. Roger. And although Piranhaconda is a proper B-movie, the film's not that bad. I mean, the effects are above average, and it can be a fun one-time watch if you're looking for some 80s-style creature features. Also, check out the other Roger Corman creature features like Sharktopus, Dino Shark, and Super Gator if you're really into these kinds of films. Piranha 3 Double D 2012. So we put Piranha 3D at the second spot on our list, but its sequel, Piranha 3 Double D from 2012, didn't quite live up to our expectations, if you can believe it. If you haven't seen this film, let me recap the plot for you. Piranha 3 Double D stars Danielle Panabaker, Catherine Bowden, Matt Bush, Christopher Lloyd, David Hasselhoff, and a ton of other people, and it's set a year after the bloody carnage of prehistoric piranhas hit Lake Victoria, Arizona in Piranha 3D. Following a massive eradication drive, Lake Victoria has become uninhabitable and the town has been largely abandoned. Meanwhile, two unsuspecting farmers, Clayton, played by Gary Busey, and Mo, played by Clu Gallagher, discover piranha eggs inside a cow carcass in a nearby lake, which hatch and kill the farmers. Soon, a school of prehistoric, evolved, bloodthirsty, carnivorous piranhas, which are now capable of walking on land, make their way through the town's plumbing, tunnels, and water systems into the newly opened Big Wet Water Park to feed off the flesh of its unsuspecting visitors. It's now up to Maddie and piranha expert Mr. Goodman, played by Lloyd, to stop the piranha's feeding frenzy. Sounds like an interesting story, right? Well, not so much. Despite some interesting cameos, the film underperformed at the box office, grossing just over $8.5 million against its $7.5 million budget, and it received negative reviews from critics and audiences alike. In fact, the film has an 11% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 53 reviews, with an average rating of 3.3 out of 10. So much for the last of the proper Piranha movies in the Piranha film franchise. Piranha Women 2022. Alright, so we're already deep into the worst Piranha movies section on the list, and the short horror film Piranha Women from 2022 is one of the worst, if not the worst. And although it's not a proper Piranha movie or part of the original Piranha film franchise, Piranha Women, as its title suggests, is about a bunch of women on an island who transform into Piranha Women. The film's story follows the quest of a man named Richard who's searching for his missing girlfriend Lexi, who's undergone some experimental cancer treatment from Dr. Sinclair on the island, who apparently is using piranha DNA to cure sick women. Richard finds Lexi has been acting strange ever since she started the treatment. Meanwhile, Richard's co-worker Jeffrey goes out with a woman he met at the local bar and ends up dead. Even worse, Richard is the main suspect in the murder. He returns to the bar to figure out what happened, and during his investigation, he finds out more about the experimental piranha DNA cancer treatment and the mysterious Dr. Sinclair who's behind it. His search leads him to a secret society of women called the Piranha Women, who have been genetically altered by the piranha DNA to develop piranha-like features, including a mouth full of piranha teeth. We know the story feels a bit weird, but it's not a terrible movie either. It kind of suffers because of its short length, and let me tell you, the movie is just over an hour long, so it feels kind of rushed, especially the ending, so things aren't exactly fully explored, and there are a lot of things happening for no reason, which leads to a lot of confusion. Also, the transformations are a little silly and over the top, but if you're able to put up with that, Piranha Women is a silly little movie that's worth checking out. Mega Piranha TV Movie 2010. If you were to ask which Piranha movies we consider to be truly bad, in terms of how the piranhas are shown in the movie, we'd have to say Mega Piranha, a made-for-TV movie from 2010, which, by the way, makes it sound even worse, because if it were the 80s or 90s, we could have passed it off as just another one of those many over-the-top creature features that go crazy with the creature factor. But Mega Piranha is a fairly modern film, yet it's notoriously bad. The film released on, you guessed it, Sci-Fi TV, and it was again about some genetically engineered piranhas which escape a lab in Venezuela's Orinoco River and head towards the Sunshine State of Florida while attacking people along the way. However, these aren't your typical piranha-sized piranhas. These are mega piranhas who get huge, and we mean really, really huge. How huge? Well, what if we said they can get as big as a whale or even a jumbo jet? And they don't just devour people, they devour everything in their path, including battleships. Imagine that. And that's not all. These jumbo-sized piranhas jump out of the river and explode on impact. Fortunately, a U.S. State Department agent, Jason Fitch, played by B-movie staple Paul Logan, and scientist Sarah Monroe, played by pop singer Tiffany, the one who sang I Think We're Alone Now, battle the humongous, destructive, explosive piranhas using some very absurd and hilarious methods when conventional methods like bombs and nukes fail. Eventually, they lure a giant piranha and use it as bait to kill the other mega piranhas in the most ingenious manner imaginable. A mega piranha devours a whole helicopter with a guy and a homing beacon inside, and Special Agent Fitch hides in a coral reef, and when the fish opens its mouth, he shoots at the helicopter wreck, which explodes along with the piranha, and the resulting bloodshed hits the other mega piranhas, causing them to enter a feeding frenzy and tear each other apart. I mean, that's some B-movie slop right there, and even if you think, what's wrong with that, the CGI is also terrible. If we were to summarize this film for you in a few words, we would say it's about over-the-top action, illogical science, and terrible CGI. However, it does have that B-movie charm, and it's one of those films that gets into the so bad it's good category, and it's garnered its own cult following as well. Piranha Sharks 2017. Not gonna lie, when we heard the title of this piranha film, we didn't have a lot of expectations to begin with, yet the movie didn't even live up to those. I mean, we understand it's a low-budget B-movie, but we didn't think it could be this bad. The movie is about a bunch of bioengineered piranha-sized great white sharks. How absurd is that? I mean, who in their right mind would crossbreed sharks and piranhas and make great white sharks the size of a fish that's no bigger than a goldfish? We think the better idea would have been to make piranhas the size of great whites and give them the best of both, and they have their endless appetites too, so they start to mutate further and escape into Manhattan's water supply before terrorizing the people. Now it's up to a small group of exterminators to save the day, along with the city's mayor, who's played by Kevin Sorbo. Trust us, we didn't expect him to star in this movie, but I guess we're not surprised. Nevertheless, these exterminators try to stop the piranha sharks from doing what they do best and stop the city of Manhattan from being exterminated, leading to some of the cheesiest, over-the-top attacks and absurd situations you'll ever come across in a movie, including the government using nukes to contain the mutated shark-piranha hybrids. And while you can argue whether Piranha Sharks or Mega Piranhas is the worst piranha movie, because, I mean, it's a hell of a debate, if we had to choose, we'd pick Piranha Sharks. I mean, the CGI in this film is some of the worst special effects we've ever seen, and trust us, you're either gonna love this movie for its stupid absurdity or hate it for wasting your time. Marvelous conclusion! So there you have it, every piranha movie ranked from best to worst. What are your thoughts on this list? Have you watched any of these films? If so, then don't forget to share your opinions about them in the comment section down below. While you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more marvelous videos like this one, and smash that like button if you enjoyed this video. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.